Hello everybody and welcome back to 2M Football.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Matt. And we are continuing on our third place team in the NFC North.
And if you didn't get it from the hint at the beginning of the episode...
It was a Boeing 747. Wait, no.
It was a Viking horn.
Oh!
We're talking about the Minnesota Vikings today.
Eager heard.
The Vikings were 8-8 this past year.
I can't believe you said that, Mike. It's just inappropriate.
I know, I'm sorry. I can't control myself sometimes. So the Vikings were third place in the NFC North with that 8-8 record. And this team got off to I would say, surprising 5-0 start to the season, led by a resurgent Sam Bradford and a stellar defense. But it all came crashing down in the final.
One-eyed pirate Mike Zimmer.
Yeah, one-eyed now. But it all came crashing down in the final 3 quarters of the season, really, due to Bradford looking a little more like how he has for most of his career and injuries derailing the defense. So let's just get right into it with this offense here. If you could just do that randomly throughout the show, that'd be nice. Whenever there's a little pause, like when I take a breath, if you could just do the horn.
The horn, you got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So, the Vikings put up 20.4 points per game, which was 23rd in the league. They averaged 315 yards per game, which was 28th. 240 of those were pass yards, which was 18th. And they were dead last in the league with 75 rush yards per game. Which is weird to say for a team that's had Adrian Peterson for the last, 8 years. Also, whenever things get awkward, just do that.
Because that doesn't make them less awkward.
All right, so Sam Bradford was the quarterback right before the season started. So he wasn't even on the roster until the end of April of last year, right? And that's when Teddy Bridgewater, about to start his second year, he tore his ACL and dislocated his knee in a practice session. And they immediately knew he was done for the year. So they spent a first-round draft pick to trade for Sam Bradford from the Eagles. Bradford had a career-high 71.6% of completions this year, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions, which was pretty nice to see. He didn't have a bad season for sure, but his conservative kind of dink and dunk tendencies often doomed this offense.
Dink and dunk. You remember those things, Dunkaroos?
Yeah, go for that right now. His biggest issue has been injuries throughout his career. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. And he did that, though, this year. And it was his best statistical season of his career. And it's looking like there's a good chance that Bradford starts again next year because as recently as this past week, head coach Mike Zimmer said he has, quote, no idea, end quote, if Bridgewater will be able to play next year. So this sounds like a really serious injury that Bridgewater suffered.
At the very least, Mike's looking at it like, hey, we don't want to rush him back because the last thing you ever want to do is rush your quarter. And not only a torn ACL, but a dislocated knee on top of it. Mm-hmm. The last thing you need is a quarterback to go to plant his leg and pop his knee again, and that's a career is over.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to let him take all the time he needs to fully recover. And Bradford looked fine. He's not going to kill this team. They also signed Case Keenum.
Because that goes over well.
Well, that's another sign to me that they're not expecting Bridgewater because Keenum will be the backup. At running back, though, it's a little bit more positive of an outlook here.
Could we say it's a cluster, you know what?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, continue.
So they had Adrian Peterson last year. He played a few games, looked terrible, and then hurt himself and was out for the season.
You put it that way. He looked terrible, so he hurt himself.
Not the two weren't related. He looked terrible, and then he hurt himself. And then he was out for the season. And that happened to be the last year of his contract, so they are not re-signing him. The guy they did bring in, though, who I'm very excited about, is a guy named Latavius Murray.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think we talked about him just a couple of weeks ago. He was signed.
He sounds like that guy that's on the Oakland Raiders.
I was I love where your head's at, because I was about to say they signed him from Oakland for a 3-year, $15 million.
Wait. He's not on Oakland anymore?
No.
I thought he just shared the name with the guy. I'm just gonna stay
I
over
think
here.
now would be a good time for the Viking horn. Murray signed a 3-year, $15 million deal with the Vikings. And he did just have ankle surgery, but he should be ready by training camp. And like we talked about when we covered him for the Raiders, Murray's a big physical back, and I think he'll fit in perfectly to this offense and be able to do, I'm not saying he's Adrian Peterson in his prime, but he'll be able to do a lot of the things that Peterson did do, like running people over, because Murray's big. The other guy there is Jerick McKinnon. He was the team's leading rusher last year after Peterson went down, but he had his worst statistical season of his 3-year career, running behind a truly terrible offensive line. McKinnon carried 159 times for 540 yards with a 3.4 average and just 2 touchdowns. Where McKinnon's more effective as a pass catcher, and he caught 43 balls for 255 yards and another 2 touchdowns. He's a little guy at 5'9", 200 pounds. He'll never be a short yardage bruiser type of running back, evidenced by the fact that he only has 4 rushing touchdowns in his 3-year career. That's not his role, but he can be effective in the passing game and on runs that take him to the outside, like sweeps and pitches.
And the creeps and the bleeps.
And screens. And he should fill this role with Murray as the primary back. So I think things look pretty good for this backfield, actually.
Now they do.
Now they do. Last year it was what you said.
For those of you who don't know.
You like that?
Not expecting that.
You liked it though.
Well done. Hey, You want to know what else that we didn't do?
Oh, where's my phone even? Usually we set a timer so that we know where we're at. Now Matt's going to have to write it down for me. Okay, 7 minutes, good. So at wide receiver... He's updating it every second now.
Yeah, I can't
It's
do
way
it.
too distracting for me. So at receiver, they've got a couple of really interesting guys. They got Stephon Diggs, who was in his 2nd year last year.
I dig it.
Yeah, so did Sam Bradford. He led the team with 84 catches that went for 900 yards and 3 touchdowns. He doesn't run a lot of deep routes, primarily handles those underneath passes and crossers, but he's really good at using his speed and vision to create a lot of yards after the catch. So
Or yak, as we like to call it.
Yep. Don't talk back.
I was thinking it, but I didn't want to say it.
Thanks.
I'm proud of
I
you.
am too. So Diggs doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. He only had 3 last year because that's not the kind of route that he usually runs. He's not that effective once they get into the red zone. But as far as getting to the red zone, he's great for that. And he'll be the number 1 wide receiver again. The guy that's almost more interesting is Adam Thielen. And he didn't do too much his first 2 years in the league, but last year, Thielen sort of exploded onto the scene with 69 catches, 967 yards. That's a 14.0 average compared to Diggs' 10.
Jeez.
And 5 touchdowns. And
That's
he's
4 more yards.
per catch. Yeah. And 5 touchdowns. So he's much more the big play guy than Diggs is. And I took a look at his Week 13 game against Dallas last year.
Yeah.
And I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but I never consolidated it. So I'm just going to read it.
Hold on, I gotta have to look over it.
He's a good route runner, and I saw him run some really nice corner routes where he found, it was a zone coverage, and he found that perfect soft spot between the corner covering the flat and the safety covering deep. He got right in between there, and Bradford made a nice throw, and he gained 23 yards on that kind of play. They also use him on screens. He gained 16 yards on a bubble screen out of the slot. He broke a tackle on the way, gained 16 yards. Several times, though, in man coverage, I did see him struggle to get a step away from his defense. Get separation. That's the word I was looking for.
That was a hard statement there. You all right?
Struggled to get separation from the corners when he was in man coverage. On one occasion, he almost made an amazing one-handed catch.
Almost,
yeah. So really shouldn't have included it. Really.
Style points.
Yeah. It looked good. See, someone could Photoshop the ball staying in his hand, and then it would look awesome.
And they just replay that, right?
Yeah. One thing I didn't really like seeing is that and this has nothing to do with him, but they had him run a lot of 5 or 6 yard curls, and he would just get hammered, like right as he caught it. Which I guess kudos to him for holding onto the ball, because when you turn your back to the defense,
you know it's coming. You
But-
just don't know when because you can't see it
Exactly, but he never dropped the ball, which is good to see. Even though some of the hits, in my opinion, were a little early, but he always hung on, which was nice. The one that impressed me the most probably was on a play. I should have made a chart for this, but I'm too lazy. He was running kind of a deep post, but he completed his route, and he saw Bradford running for his life, getting out of the pocket. So he did a great job of coming back towards Bradford, towards the sideline. Bradford saw him, made a nice throw, and he made one of those diving toe tap sideline catches that are, highlight reel catches. So that was really awesome to see. Overall in this game, he caught 7 passes for 86 yards. And the reason I thought it would be important to talk about him is because they just re-signed him to a 4-year, $19.25 million deal. So he's obviously part of this team's long-term plans. The other guy here at receiver, Laquan Treadwell. He was the Viking. Hey, I have a trivia question for you. Don't look at my notes.
Oh, okay.
He was the Vikings.
Take off my glasses.
He was the Vikings' first-round pick last year. And want to guess how many passes he caught last year?
A treadmill. Wait, what? This is a trick question, isn't it?
It's just a question.
It's just a question.
It's just a question.
I'm going to go with 0.
No.
I caught 2.
No.
1.
Yes.
Yes!
He caught 1 pass last year.
Was it a big pass?
15 yards.
That's not bad.
He had a 15.0 average.
Yeah, right?
So
I'd retire if I was him.
Jokes aside, Treadwell played
Better than a treadmill.
He barely played. Just a handful of snaps across 9 games. He had a nagging ankle injury, so he didn't get to do much in his rookie season. But at 6'2", 220 pounds, he's pretty much the ideal size for a wide receiver, and the team is expecting/hoping that he will step up in year 2. And I am expecting/hoping the same. And all 3 of these guys are going to be relied on more because in free agency, they lost Cordero Patterson and Charles Johnson, 2 of their receivers. At tight end, they've got Kyle Rudolph, who set career highs across the board last year with 83 catches, 840 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And part of that, I'd say, is the play style of Bradford, the dink and dunk tendencies that we talked about. But Rudolph has always been a solid receiving tight end when given the opportunity. So I like him. They did lose Rhett Ellison to free agency, and he really played more of a fullback role, even though he was technically a tight end. But he was a great run blocker, and I think they will miss him.
And he's not a red-nosed reindeer.
No. So moving on to offensive line. This was one of the worst O-lines in the league last year. Matt Khalil and TJ Clemmings were a disaster at the tackle positions. But both these spots have been addressed via free agency, so these guys know what they're doing. They signed Mike Remmers at left tackle to a 5-year, $30 million deal. And Riley Reif at right tackle, he's 28. He signed a 5-year, $58 million deal.
So they're expecting a lot out of these two.
They are. And if they live up to the task, that'll be good because they have a solid interior, the rest of their players. Joe Berger at center, he saved this unit last year from being even worse than it already was. I know, right? And he's definitely a top 10 center in the league. Alex Boone at left guard, they signed him last year to a 4-year, $26 million deal, and he's been solid. So if these new tackles do what they're hoping they do, this will be a much better running offense this year.
Well, especially because they took the time to address the position. They weren't just like, we'll see what happens next year. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll help too with all the stats then with Sam Bradford and all this.
Yep. And
when you don't have to run for your life, it makes your job a little easier.
Yeah, definitely. So they've addressed what I would say was their biggest holes. I don't have any more moves on the offense that I think they should make. I think they're set up for success. And that means I'm going to turn things over to you now, Matt.
Uh-oh.
Learn a little bit about this Viking defense.
Well, it was there. They played. Stop the football.
Yeah, right. That's my job now.
Yeah, I hope you've been practicing.
Got something even better.
He's got it pulled up. So this defense was ranked towards the top almost across the board except for against the run. Sixth in points allowed at 19.2. Third in both yards and passing yards with 314.9 and 207.9 respectively. And 106.9 rushing yards, which was their worst stat at 20th. I honestly believe that this defense just got wore down towards the end of it because that 5-0 start while Bradford was learning the offense, everything was on the defense.
Yeah.
They were forcing turnovers. They were causing a lot of disruption, but that can only be kept up for so long. And I think because Bradford was just fitting it in, the offensive line was just complete trash. Bradford was running for his life half the time.
Yeah, he was.
It meant that the offense had very short series, which no matter who your team is going to wear your defense down. What I wanted to focus, I think it will bounce back, but I think it's going to take a little bit. And I mean this as in there is one player that is no longer with this team that is irreplaceable, and I wanted to spend some time on him because
no longer with the NFL.
Chad Greenway retired after this year. And I think that is just a huge blow. Statistically, he only had 41 tackles this year, a pass deflection, and interception. But what I noticed about him, more so than any other player, was the connection he had with his coach and the guy who called the defensive plays, which was Mike Zimmer. So many times on the little things like mic'd up and all that stuff, on the sideline, Mike and Chad Greenway were always communicating, always talking. Well, this is what do you want to do? What's this? On an instance where they went into overtime, now this may have been not 2016 but 2015, I remember Mike Zimmer asked Chad Greenway, what do you want to do in overtime? He goes, do you want to give them the ball and kick into... This was against the Rams because they were talking about the wind conditions changed. And Mike Zimmer took Chad Greenway's advice and gave the Rams the ball in overtime, forcing them to throw into the wind. And Chad Greenway turned around and told Mike Zimmer, we will stop them. And that's exactly what they did because they forced a 3-and-out for the Rams. The Rams were then forced to punt into the wind, which makes it extremely difficult.
Right.
And they turn around and won it with a field goal.
That's awesome.
So it's just that type of connection that you don't always see with a lot of these players because Greenway was the captain of this defense. And that connection he had with Mike Zimmer is just going to be something that's going to take a long time to replace because there's just a level of respect. And my most exciting thing was that he spent his entire career in Minnesota, 11 years.
That's always awesome to see.
And he was a very clean player. I found out he was only fined 3 times in his 11 years. In 2012, 2011, and 2008 for a total of only $36,000, which some players get off of one hit.
Right. He played the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Effectively, cleanly, and with, a level of respect.
Should we blow the horn for him?
Yes, in honor of Chad Greenway. In honor of Chad Greenway.
It's not working. What's happening here?
Mike.
I'm so sorry. This was just working. I'm so sad right now.
Was Chad Greenway not worth the horn?
All right, one more time. Okay, for Chad Greenway.
That was the worst tribute in the history of tributes ever.
I assume
I hope you're proud of yourself.
I assume the editor is going to cut that so that it happened right away. Not after a minute of trying to work this
I'm going to leave
technology.
your debacle in.
Oh my gosh, poor Chad. Hope he never hears this. I don't think there's much risk of that.
What scares me is the person that was next in line behind him was a guy called Emmanuel Lemur. He has limited experience. There's little to no stats on this guy. So that's I just think as a whole, it's a huge hole. Not production wise, but just what he did.
Who's going to be the leader of this defense now?
That's honestly a tough question. I really don't know because the only 2 other players that really stand out to me is Sendejo and Xavier Rhodes, but they're both safeties and corners. So that's not your leader of your defense. Usually comes from your linebacking core because they have the ability to communicate. And it's not a matter of who's going to step up and do it because technically if they start Emmanuel Lemur, he could be the captain of the defense, but the problem is will he do it as effectively?
Right.
I mean, Kendricks is Eric Kendricks.
He's a young guy. He's only been around 2 years, but as a middle linebacker, Kendricks has been pretty effective. But it's being productive on the field and being a leader aren't necessarily the same.
One and the same.
So you don't know.
Because like I said, Greenway's production this year wasn't outstanding off the charts, but what he does while he's on the field is the reason he had the career he had.
Yep.
And then the two other players I wanted to point out was Sendejo and Rhodes. Rhodes, I think, is just fantastic. He's an amazing cover guy.
Yeah.
And Sendejo, what I notice a lot is he is great at covering receiving tight ends. I don't know what it is about his play style, but he does a fantastic job at it. And since they're still here, I have hope. I mean, if Kendrick steps up, which means, he may be the only logical choice to take the captaincy, but then again, those are big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
I think this defense should be right about where it is. I really do. I think it's going to be a top 10 defense again.
Yeah, they're going to get some important pieces back. And Harrison Smith missed the end of the season. He's their free safety. He's recovering from... he had ankle surgery this offseason, so he'll be back. And they re-signed Terrence Newman, who's the 38-year-old cornerback who is still producing. They signed him to a one-year deal. And so between him and Xavier Rhodes, they've also got Trey Waynes at corner, who they drafted high a couple years ago. One issue potentially could be a defensive tackle, where their starter Sharif Floyd, he only played one game last year, and with a knee because of a knee injury, and then apparently now his career is in danger after complications from that knee surgery. So that's a situation that we're going to have to monitor, and I'm sure they will be too, obviously. Mm-hmm. But that could be an issue for them. It's not going to help this run defense for sure if he doesn't come back.
The other thing I just want to point out, and I hope we all wish the best and his trials are over, but poor Mike Zimmer had surgery throughout the season too.
Yeah, that's right.
A detached retina. How fun does that sound?
That just freaks me out to think about.
And to think he only missed one game.
Yeah, it's impressive.
And it was because, and this is a coach who's and I'm just going to flat out say it, he's a hard ass.
Uh-huh.
But he commands such respect and love from his players that it was his players that were told him he never would have went in. He was going to push the surgery until the offseason. Uh-huh. And his players were like, what? Like, no game is worth your eyesight.
Get that retina reattached.
Yeah, right. But
just pop it back in there. Yeah, right.
But you could see when he did miss that one game that there was just the team as a whole just missed it. And I thought for sure they would have won that game because you usually play harder for your coach. But they didn't.
Well, they were also missing his direction and
what he does as a coach.
What he brings to the table.
I also heard rumors that he is one of the most aggressive screamers on the sideline when it comes to refereeing. But he's a coach that has his players back. And I remember, I think it was the same game against the Rams. It had to have been in 2015 because this is when Bridgewater was still playing. And I remember they put a questionable late hit on Teddy Bridgewater. And I saw the clip. He's one of the few coaches I truly and dearly love. He's just a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
I remember he took his headset and whipped it onto the field and went on the field screaming because of the late hit. He turned around and brought his defense to the sideline and said, "Go get him." And in that game, the defense turned around and sacked. Who was the quarterback at the time? That wasn't Keenum. Oh my God, who was it? It could have been 2015.
Was it Foles?
Yes, Nick Foles. Oh my God, that's right. Nick Foles is on the Rams. Right. They sacked Nick Foles on the next 4 series in a row.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Like Zimmer is that kind of guy, and that's why I think like this team as a whole is growing up under very good leadership. Mike's double checking that 2015 quarterback.
Yeah, it was Foles. Foles and Keenum both played, but Foles was the primary starter.
And so I wanted to throw those pointers in about Mike Zimmer because
that's awesome. Yeah,
and he also plays my favorite type of defense, which is called a camouflage defense, where he brings the exact same look but different personnel on every play. So he'll have 5 people on the line, but then once the snap happens, 3 of them drop back to rush, or he makes everything look the same.
You never know who's actually blitzing.
It makes it hard to call pass protection because the quarterback doesn't know. And I'm done talking about the defense because it's already 25 minutes, and I've spent like 5 minutes on Mike Zimmer. But I just think this team is in great care. Mm-hmm. Even though Norv Turner mysteriously just quit halfway through the season. I think that was the other reason for...
That was strange.
That was the other reason for Bradford's struggle.
Right, because Turner was offensive-minded.
Mm-hmm. So with that in the books, it is time...
TLDW. Too long didn't watch.
I have nothing funny to turn it into because it doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, right. A couple more for good measure. So Vikings were 8-8 last year, third in the NFC North. They got off to a 5-0 start, led by Bradford looking pretty good and the defense looking very good. But they only went 3-5 after that, or 3-8 after that. Sorry. Bradford regressed a little bit, and injuries kind of derailed this defense. Bradford did look good, though. He had set career high completion percentage at 71, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. And he stayed healthy, which has been his biggest problem throughout his career. So he looked pretty good. And it's looking like he'll be the starter again next year because there's no timeline for when Bridgewater might come back from that dislocated knee and torn ACL from last summer. At running back, Adrian Peterson is gone, and they brought in Latavius Murray from Oakland, which is very exciting. Wide receiver, they re-signed Adam Thielen, so it's going to be him, Stephon Diggs, and hopefully we get to see more of Laquan. Why can't I do this? Laquan Treadwell.
God, that's like me and Jamal Charles.
It is. It's almost that bad.
What?
So it'll be Diggs, Thielen, and Treadwell.
That was a shot.
And Kyle Rudolph is another pass catcher at tight end. He looks really good.
You gave Love a bad name.
Offensive line, they had issues at both the tackle spots, and they've addressed them both already through free agency. So this whole offense, I would say, is looking good and should be primed for big things.
On the defensive side, I spent most of the time talking about Chad Greenway and Mike Zimmer. I know those are... But the loss of Chad Greenway retiring is just a huge blow to this defense. They really did lose their captain. Mm-hmm. Kendricks, I think, once you pulled that up, I totally forgot about him because I was so focused on Greenway.
Yeah, the middle linebacker.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the successor, but it's going to take a while to develop the role. Mm-hmm. He has the stats to produce on the field, but as we talked about, being a production master and being a leader of the team are two very different things.
Yep.
But I think he's capable. But now it's time for him to step up and show he can do it. Because now it's his turn to get the radio inside the helmet and listen to Zimmer scream. But they do have good supporting cast. I mean, they have Sadejo and Rhodes, who are still fantastic. I don't know what's going to happen with Emmanuel Lemire. I really don't, because he was next in line behind, directly behind on the depth chart of Chad Greenway. But he's got limited experience, so they might give him a shot.
The other thing that I forgot to mention before is they signed Detone Jones at outside line. I was about to say offensive linebacker. What's going on here? It's been a long couple months doing these recaps. Outside linebacker Detone Jones. He's 26.
This is a preview of what the Chicago show is going to be like. It's just going to be a debacle.
We just stop now. I think it's a similar thing, though, to Lamour. He has limited playing time. They signed him to just a one-year deal, so it's just kind of, let's see what you've got sort of thing.
But I expect this defense to be right back where it is. Production-wise, we'll just see how the leadership. Minnesota Vikings,
man. Yeah. One more to go.
One more to go. Thank you guys all for being a part of it. We have one more. Stick with us through one more, please. It's been a blast. Click that like button. Click subscribe so you can see what we have to say about our home team of Chicago. Email us. What do you think? Do you think Bradford's the man to be? What do you think about the Bridgewater situation? Is it just a matter of Zimmer is actually giving him time to heal, or is there something else in the works going on there? And what about the retirement of Chad Greenway? What impact do you think that's going to have? So email us, or even better, comment below about all that. Check us out on Twitter
at 2M_football.
And we will see you in the Windy City.
Yep. See you next time.